Hey, this is Mike Lindsay from Vital MX. I'm out here at Apollo Raceway today riding the 2016 Suzuki RM-Z250. The RM-Z250 this year definitely does not look really any different than its predecessors, but it's actually really surprising how many changes Suzuki has made this year. Just talking about the engine alone, we're talking about over 80 changes. It's kind of hard for me to go through and list them all. If you want to check them out, click on our first look to get the exact details. But I can tell you it's basically from the cams, piston, valves, crank, the entire way the cases are made for oil flow. They were just trying to get rid of the mechanical loss in the engine from the oil flow and other things that just cause friction, which robs power. The other noticeable change is Suzuki has gone away from Showa's SFF spring fork and they've gone to the KYB PSF2 air fork. It's similar to the unit used by the Honda CR-450, other than instead of having high-speed and low-speed compression on one side, high-speed and low-speed rebound on the top of the other, they actually have compression and rebound on both forks, compression down below and high-speed and low-speed rebound up top. So each fork is doing the same function. The shock has also changed. It's gone away from Showa shock with an 18mm shaft to a KYB one with a 16mm shaft, and also a different set of adjusters. You have the full range of high-speed, low-speed rebound, and high-speed and low-speed compression on this shock. The last major change is the frame itself. The front cradle has been changed. It's a lot more thinned out. It has a different flex characteristics, and the head stay is basically taken off the RM-Z450, which has been really popular since the 15 and up model. Now, getting into how these changes affected the bike, the Suzuki 250 after the last couple years has definitely been falling behind in the engine program. This year's bike is an improvement, but it's definitely a lot more low to mid. By freeing up all that mechanical loss, the bike has gained a lot of torque right off the bottom. There's just less restriction to the engine. It's a little bit weird with gearing. Second is very short and third is very broad. Third does not have enough torque to carry that through corners, so you're going all the way to second a lot in corners and then immediately shifting to third. I would probably add almost 2 teeth to the rear and try to get it to the point you could ride third and fourth much, because both of those gears are very widespread and you'd be able to ride the bike a lot more aggressively without having to think about constant shifting. The RM-Z250 has been very popular the last couple years for its handling characteristics. The chassis is very normal, nothing too odd about it. It's a very comfortable to sit on bike, very easy to jump out on your first couple laps. You don't feel like you're trying to figure things out quite as much. It comes down a little bit to me with the new suspension. The fork to me is a bit on the stiff side. It feels like it has a heavy spring rate. So we lowered the PSI 2 pounds in the fork, and we also opened up the compression a little bit. What I was struggling with is the fork felt very topped out, very extended, a lot of initial tension. By doing this change, I was able to get the front to load more in the corners, allow for more front end traction, and also take some of the force off the rear end, which allowed the rear end to stay up more in the stroke. The other thing that struck me as a little odd is now with all the other manufacturers going to larger front brake rotors, the Suzuki is the only one in the class left with more of a standard size we were used to a couple years ago. And having ridden some of our bikes the last couple weeks, it's definitely a little bit noticeable your first couple laps adjusting to that little bit less power that you have. It's easier to grab a handful on this bike without having problems, but at the same time there's those couple situations where I feel like I'd like a little bit bigger rotor. The 2016 RM-Z250 is definitely by far an improvement over the 2015. I feel like the suspension, even though being stiff in the fork, the overall suspension components are a little bit better than last year. The engine is definitely better and the chassis is as well. They've taken the positives that the bike has and they've pushed it forward. It's not night and day different, but there are still a couple nagging negatives that if I were to personally ride this bike, I would be changing and putting a little more effort into. On the bright side, there still are those positives to be gained. There is a lot of adjustability currently with this model, and at the same time, you're gaining a really good chassis and some better suspension components.